Greetings hobbyists, this is rsandsofall, and in this video we're going to have a look at how to make a radial array for free that's so quick and easy to use you just can't go wrong. So just to show you what we're going to end up with, this is our radial array that is working off this object, and what we can do if you look over in the modifier panel is change how many versions of this we've got. So we can change however many we want, so 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And you can change the radius to an exact amount so you know exactly how far these are apart. You can also, if I just bring in something like a quad sphere, I'm just going to move that over here, you can also really quickly change this to another object. For example, I'm just going to change that to the sphere, and you can see how quick and easy that is to be able to change and manipulate. So let's have a look at how we make this. So this idea actually came about after a comment from someone on one of my other videos, which was looking at instancing, and there's a link to that in the top right hand corner. And Tony Teo, my apologies if that's pronounced incorrectly, asked if he could use instancing to make a sort of radial pattern, and I said no, that's probably not a great idea. What you want to use is a radial array, and I linked him to one of my videos where I showed him how to do a radial array. There's a link to that in the top right hand corner as well, and it's one of my earlier videos, so if you want to see me blunder and stutter through a video, that's the one to go and watch. And in that I go through making a radial array using an empty. So effectively you just use an empty and you use that as a reference point as you're making an array. You can watch the video in the link if you want to go and have a look at how to do that. But it got me thinking, could you do a radial array with instancing? Because in theory you couldn't do it around one point, but if you had a lot of points, you could make a point per instance. And now with geometry nodes, that's really easy to do, and maybe that would actually make a better array, or a better method of doing a radial array, than using what was previously the pretty standard workflow. So let's have a look at how we do this, and we'll talk about why this is actually really good, and it speeds your life up no end, because yeah, it takes a little bit of time to set this up, but once you've set it up once, you can use it pretty much instantly anytime you need it. So we're going to do the standard thing of pulling up the timeline at the bottom and turning it into a geometry node editor. I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to bring in a cube just because we need to have something there. I'm going to select that and then click New to bring up the geometry node. And we've got this group input and we've got our group output. And we don't want those connected, so we're just going to get rid of that connection. I should mention I'm using an add-on called Node Wrangler. That allows you to press Control on the right mouse button to cut through node links and things like that. It's an add-on that comes with Blender, so you just need to activate it. So first of all, we need the points that we're going to make this array around. So we're going to use a circle for this. So Shift and A, and I'm just going to type in circle, and we want a mesh circle. You could probably use a curved circle. We don't want it filled. If we just connect that up, we've got this, and at the moment we've got 32 vertices. That's way more than we need. Let's put it down to 5. So you can see here we've now got the start of our instancing, and usefully we can change this vertices really quick and easily, which is what we're going to want if we want to put more instances on this radial array. And we can change the radius of it, which is something you can't do quickly and easily with the method of using an empty. I mean, you sort of just guess and move things around, whereas this is going to have an exact amount. So that's going to be really useful. Now notice I'm not deleting this group input. We'll talk about why later, but let's get this set up first. So what we need to do is we're going to have to instance on these points. And I've used that a number of times on the channel to do various different things. And there's going to be a video coming up on the project to make a building for a sort of fantasy or historical setting. So you might like that as well. So we want instances on points. So let's grab that there, put that in, and that's got our points, and everything disappears until we tell it what to instance. So we're going to Shift and A, and we want an object info node, which is going to be there, and we want the geometry going into the instance. Now what this is going to allow us to do is use this drop bottle, click on the cylinder, and we get all of our instances coming up. So I'm going to leave that there just for now, but we're going to play around with that later. But this is just using it as a demonstration, and this is using the same sort of object, this gun barrel that I had for the original video. I did make this again, so it's slightly different, but you'll get the idea. It's got something, and usefully it has a side to it. And you can see at the moment that we've got these sides all pointing in the same direction, which generally for a radial array is not what we want. And Tony Teo was really clear that he wanted things pointing outwards from the center of the array, so this doesn't work at this point. But we'll deal with that. Let's just finish this bit off first then. So what we're going to do is come over here, Shift and A, and I need to do a realize instances, otherwise the instances don't actually get created when you come over to the modifier panel and click apply. So that has to go there. So now let's deal with the idea of, well, we want these pointing outwards. And this we could do theoretically with our rotation. We just need to rotate it round, but it rotates everything. We need to rotate each bit individually, and that's the hard bit for this. Now, to work out how we're going to do this, what I'm going to do is just quickly link back to here, and we're going to just get back to, well, what it is, so 4 points at the moment. And if I just come in here and apply this for a second so we can see the vertices, what's important about geometry nodes is you can start using bits of this to influence what's being instanced. And what we're going to use is we're going to use the normals of these vertices. So if I just come up here, I can show you that each vertex has a normal. If I just increase this in size, you can see these blue lines that are coming off of it. So each one of these has a normal that points outwards, and that's what we want our object to do. We want something that points outwards. I'm just going to deactivate that because it gets annoying, and we're just going to Control and Z to go back to the point where we've got these geometry nodes here, and let's reactivate that. So we want to recognize that there are normals pointing in a direction, and we want this to be our rotation, and we can do that quite nicely because over here we've got a rotation socket that we can put this into. And if I press Control and A and type in normal, we can get it to look at the normal data. And in theory, all we do is plug this in, and this has gone horribly wrong. I mean, it looks quite cool, but it's definitely not what we wanted. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that this normal is set up as a vector, so a line pointing in a direction. That's not a rotation, which is what we want. So we're going to have to convert this into a rotation. And actually, Geometry Nodes has something to do that. It's called align Euler to vector. You just put it in there, plug this into vector importantly, and then we're going to bring the rotation to the rotation. And you can see it's sort of got the idea, but it's not quite doing it correctly. We need to work out where this is, and to be honest, I just fiddle around with this. And effectively, if we look at this, it's doing it wrong. It's pointing inwards, so all I'm going to do is come to this. So I'm just going to grab this, rotate it on the Z-axis by 180, and then Control A, and I'm going to apply the rotation, and now it's working. Everything is pointing outwards. So if I come back to here, we can do exactly what we wanted to. We can move around a number of vertices down or up, so we can have, say, for example, 7. I can move the radius out, and everything's pointing outwards. And let's put that there, and let's bring that down. So this is exactly what I wanted. All we need to know in the future is that when we create this, we need to have the outside pointing in the Y direction, but we can always change things over. Now, the one thing that is annoying about this at this point is I'd have to keep up this geometry node bit to be able to do anything with it. But actually, we can change that as well to make this really easy to customize. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to this panel that says groups, and at the moment we've got geometry, which is what goes into this group input node that I said to not get rid of. So I'm actually going to select that and then press minus so it's gone. And then it just leaves this blank socket. So if I just grab, let's say, the vertices and put that there, we now, and you'll notice on the modifier panel over here, where we've got our geometry node, now have a vertex bit. And I can move this up and down here, so I don't need to go into the geometry nodes. I can do the same with the radius. So now I've got that over here as well. And what's really cool is if I get rid of this, we can actually plug this from the object info node into here so that we can select our object. So now I don't need this open. I'm just going to scroll this up so you can see it and take a screen print if you want to make this easier for you to make yourself. So just pause it and do that. And then I'm going to get rid of the geometry nodes and show you exactly what this does. So what we've got up here is we've got this node which is called cube. I'm going to rename that. You could either double click on it or press F2 to radial array node. And then I know I can click on that, and then all I do is come over here to object, pick my object, so I want the cylinder, and it appears, and I can change my vertices up, and I can change my radius to a specific amount. So all I need to do is copy this radial array node into anything, and then I can now use this to make my radial arrays. So what I'm actually going to do is come here, let's get rid of that. So I'm going to come to the object outliner, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to copy this object, even though we can't see anything other than the origin. And I'm going to put this into my asset browser. So I've got a separate file for all my assets, which is just here. And all I'm going to do is paste this in, and I'm going to select it and press G to move it over to where I have my geometry node ones. I'm going to make this an asset. And importantly, I'm going to then take that asset and I'm going to save it to my geometry nodes there, and then I need to file and save. I've done that very quickly. There's a link in the top right hand corner to a video on how to use the asset library and what I've done here and how this all works. So do feel free to check that out. And if I now open up this alternative file that I've got here, where we've got something that looks like a very basic petal, and this is going to be the center of our flower. If I want to make a radial array now, all I need to do is open up my asset browser. So just come down here and go to asset browser, click that I want this for my user library. I want geometry nodes, just drag that in. There we go, it's there. Alt-A to get it in the same place. So at this point, I know my radial array is in the middle of what's going to be my polyny bit. I can click my object, and that's going to be my petal, which is the cube. And there we go, it's done. I can change my vertices up. So I've got more or less petals. I can move those petals closer or further apart. It makes it really, really fast to do a radial array. You just drag it in and then put the object to it. Now, before I finish and get lots of comments, don't get me wrong, I know there's a better way of doing radial arrays than this. If I just grab this, Shift and D to move it over here, and then press Q. So this is using hard ops, and then go to radial array. You've got this radial array where you just move your mouse wheel up and down to change the amount of effectively petals or duplicates you've got, and you can move in and out to change how far it is with your mouse. So yeah, that is there. That is using an add-on called hard ops. I love hard ops, especially with box cutter, but it is something that you've got to pay for, whereas this is free. Also, this does have some benefits of doing it this way. Say I want to modify this petal, because this is the thing that's being instanced, I've still got a version of it over here that I can change around. And if I go into, let's say, vertex mode, you'll notice that it changes and takes off the modifiers that we're looking at here. And if I grab those G and Y and move them around, it changes it in real time, so I can see what's going on and then go back into object mode and it's made those changes. Whereas this version, if I go to edit mode and go to vertex, you'll notice it brings it back to the petal. You can't see all of the other versions of it, which is really annoying in some instances, because say I want to make sure that I've got the petals as wide as they can be, I can go into vertex mode, A, S, and then X, and I can see that happening in real time and make sure it's as wide as they can be. Whereas here, I have to go into vertex mode, select those vertices, S, X, cool, that's my petal. Go into, oh no, that's overlapping, I don't want that overlapping. Let's go into vertex mode, S, X, let's make it thinner. Oh no, that's too big a gap. Like, it's annoying that you can't see it as it's happening. That would be really cool if they added that in as an option. So, even though this undisputably is the faster way of doing it, it's paid for, it does have its negatives, whereas this is free. It's quick to put everything in place, and it's got some added benefits to it of you being able to modify the thing that's being instanced outside without collapsing down the object to do it. So there we go, that is our radial array using geometry nodes. Pretty simple and easy to set up, and do have a look at that asset library if you haven't used that before. It's such a useful tool for saving all of your objects that you use quite regularly in your projects. Have a great day, guys.